What is up? Welcome into this Monday afternoon edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm here in the studio. Kyle's at home, and we got Matt Ryan joining us as he does every single Monday. We're going to do a little different today. First block, we're going to be breaking down Sunday Night Football, a massive game with massive playoff implications as the Bills took down the 49ers in a big, big way. 49ers fall to 5-7 now, looking on the outside in at the playoff picture, but we got to start with Josh Allen. The play of the weekend, the passing touchdown and receiving touchdown on the same play, only the fifth player in NFL history to do so, the first since Marcus Mariota famously did it with the Tennessee Titans. Matt, let's start with you. Is he the MVP as it stands right now?
Yeah. So yesterday I was saying I think Lamar Jackson had the best case for it given his numbers, but when you talk about what Josh Allen did last night, what he's done in the biggest games on the biggest stages, just dominating football games. And the play that he made, usually takes one or two plays like this that are memorable, that stand out, that kind of catapult you to the front. I think he's in the driver's seat right now. I really do. Given what Lamar did last night, I think Saquon is nipping at his heels, though. I think Saquon is making one of the strongest cases for MVP. So I got to give a shout out to Nate and Coach Cower, who had both them yesterday on the show, and I was sticking with Lamar. So I think I've changed my tune, though. I've changed my tune. I think both those guys are in the driver's seat right now.
Matty Ice, you got to understand that this guy Saquon Barkley's got the best. He's got the best group in football, in my opinion. He's got an all-star team. Josh Allen, the complaints we had about this Bills team, the reason that a guy like me so stupidly did not have them on a contenders list at the beginning of the year was because we still had to get to know this group in totality, and Josh Allen has taken this thing and put it on his back. And Mike and I have talked about the offensive line, how they're a strong point for that group, and it showed last night. Explosive runs, Josh Allen able to do the things that we've fallen in love with Josh Allen for doing. In my book, he is the MVP right now, okay? And it doesn't even have to be close, guys.
There's still what, 4 or 5 games left to go, though?
Yeah, they're getting hot. They're getting hot.
A lot can happen.
I'm going to punt on the MVP conversation because there is. We have time. We can do it week 18, right? But I wanted to ask you, Matt, about something I heard on the broadcast last night. Chris, Mike Tirico were all but saying that the departure of Stefon Diggs has allowed Josh Allen to take much more of a leadership role on this team and basically make it his team. Before, it seemed, they were suggesting that he, deferred to Diggs in a lot of ways, which is normal. He was a guy who, when Diggs came over there, was still young, was still not, established as the franchise quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, and Diggs helped him get to that level. But at some point, and obviously this year, it seems like he's taken the next step in his leadership. Can you describe that sort of relationship in the locker room and how that interplay can lead to maybe a quarterback not taking the biggest role when he has a, quote unquote diva type of number one wide receiver?
Yeah. Listen, I think it's a really interesting time in his career, right? You go from being this young player and then overnight, given the roster changing, you become one of the veteran, the older guys, the guy that everybody's going to, right? And I remember that in my career. We had a coaching staff change. I was in year 7 and 8, right about where Josh is. Coaching staff changes. A lot of players depart. New players come in, and you're looking around. You're going, where's Todd McClure, my center, who was my guy for 6 years, my first 6 years, who was, 10 years older than me. Where's Tony Gonzalez? Where are all these other guys that were these, veteran players? And then all of a sudden, you're that. And so I think Josh is in that position, given kind of the turnover of the roster. The departure of Steph Diggs, I think that has, part to do with it too. As a young player, you are deferential to the guys who are established in the league, right? The guys who have been doing it for a long time. And I always felt like a quarterback as a young one, like you pick your spots. You would pick your spots to kind of give your input. But when it was time on the field, everybody knew who was in charge. And I think we're seeing Josh now. I think he's always been in charge on the field. I think he is now completely in charge of that locker room. Everybody's feeding off of his energy. And the thing I like most is just the way they're spreading the football around. And I think, you can talk about leadership all you want. I think the fact that they're just using different guys, backs out of the backfield, tight ends. Dawson Knox has reemerged 3 or 4 weeks with Dalton Kincaid being down. They're showing the depth of this roster. I think that's where the biggest impact has been. Just his ability to not worry about trying to force it to one guy, make sure we're going where the coverage dictates, and just trusting guys to do their job.
I saw a really terrible thing last night in that Christian McCaffrey going down midway through that game. He obviously missed the first 8 games of this season with that Achilles injury, but this one reportedly a PCL injury. It was likely the play before. Everyone saw him pull up really lame and question whether it was that Achilles again. No, it was a PCL. No word on the timeline yet for that injury. But if he's out an extended period of time, and if he is going to miss the entire regular season at this point, do we think the 49ers are done? Are they finished at this point, Matt?
Well, time's running out, right? And you look at the way Seattle's playing, gutsy win for them yesterday and the comeback win. You look at what the Rams are doing too. I think this Rams team is kind of maybe sneaky in the driver's seat for the NFC West. I know they're 1 game back, but I just look at how Matthew Stafford's playing, young defensive group that kind of flies around. Experienced championship caliber head coach. He's got that pedigree, championship caliber quarterback. They know what it takes this time of the year. I kind of look at those two in the driver's seat, at least in my opinion, in the NFC West. And honestly, I'd put San Francisco, given how they've played, at the bottom of the NFC West right now. I just think, anything can happen. It's so tight in that division. So I don't want to completely put them, under the ground, but it's to me, you've got teams that are excelling, and you've got a really, really good quarterback, like an all-time good quarterback in that division that I think is playing really well right now.
Mike, when I think about the San Francisco 49ers, I think about a team that's been dealing with death by 1,000 paper cuts since the offseason. I mean, there's certain things that you can push through and figure out as an offense, like who's going to play running back. And we saw Jordan Mason hit his head on the goalpost 6 times in the first 5 weeks. And we said, well, we've got this issue solved. Christian McCaffrey, stay in Germany. But then it's like Ayuk issues, the injury, Trent Williams on a private plane the night before the season starts. It all kind of led to this failed party that was the San Francisco 49ers this year. They get Brock Purdy on the last year of his deal. He's about to be worth a mega yacht next year. So this is the window, and it's been a shame to watch this Niners team fumble the bag. And like you said, Matt, we could have them at the bottom of that division right now with how things are shaking up.
I want to push back on the window thing, though. All right, look at all of the best teams in the league right now. All of them have a massive quarterback contract, right? So you can do it, right? And so I still think they've got a chance. The thing that concerns me with them, at least specifically for this season, is you have guys that typically are reliable and playmakers that are not making plays for you. Fumble by Juszczyk going in. It felt like the air came out of that game last night when he's going into the end zone, fumbles the ball going in. George Kittle, a couple of weird drops, one on the screen, just like atypical plays, from guys that I feel like for so long have been so reliable.
But Matt, you're talking about paying these quarterbacks. You're not talking about Lamar, Patrick, or Josh. I mean, Brock Purdy, a great quarterback. Do not get it twisted at all. But they ain't them. He ain't them. So if you're going to be unloading your treasure chest on this quarterback next year, rightfully so, he's earned it. There's levels to this stuff, Matt Ryan. There's Jared Goff's the most prolific passer in the NFL right now outside of Joe Burrow. God rest the Cincinnati Bengals. But
I think it's a fair argument. I'm saying I love Jared Goff. I love him as a player. But I think given what they mean to their teams, how they play for their teams, I think they're similar.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think it's fair. And the worry I have, though, with Purdy is weather. This is you go from the divisional round last year against the Packers when it started raining. He was unplayable. Truly couldn't. They were talking about benching him in that one. 49ers fans were, and then this in the snow, just losing the ball in his
Whopper hands.
His motion. It's like I'm worried if and now San Francisco's not known necessarily for bad weather, but I'm worried if I'm going to pay a guy franchise quarterback money and a little bit of rain turns him into a bumbling mess. That's not something that I want to be paying $55 million a year for, even if obviously he's taking big steps forward this year and looks like,
Matty Ice, I didn't say it, Matty. I didn't say it.
But
I'm just pushing back on the narrative in general that teams only have this window right now on rookie contract quarterbacks. That is not the case. It is not the case.
I'm the idiot that said that Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills window was closed. So here we go.
And it's also not the case when the organization that they have there in San Francisco, they've drafted exceptionally well in the John Lynch era. They've been uniquely good at finding talent later in drafts. Obviously, when you have a guy like Kyle Shanahan, you're going to have a consistently good offense year in and year out. So I'm not too worried about San Francisco 49ers, but this season, stick a fork in them. All right, after this, we're going to get to Matt Ryan's coveted quarterback of the week coming up next. Before we get to Matt Ryan's quarterback of the week, we got to start with his former team, the Atlanta Falcons, and what the heck is going on with Kirk Cousins. This past weekend against the Los Angeles Chargers, he goes 24 of 39, 245 yards, and 4 picks, including a disastrous pick 6. The last 3 games, 0 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. We kind of brushed on the topic last week saying, there's whispers about going to Michael Penix. Those whispers are growing a little bit louder now. What the heck is going on, Matt, with Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough sledding. Appreciate the graphic right here, too. We'll go back to 2012 when I had 0 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions, I believe, in that game. But we won, which is all good. It's been tough sledding. It's been tough sledding. And we did. We talked about it last week and saying, you know what, it's still a couple of weeks away, in my opinion. But if the performances continue like this, I think yesterday kind of accelerated that process. The thing I'll say is it's just poor decision making. That's the part, I think, with the veteran player where it's head scratching. It's not like you're forcing some in. There's games, depending on how they're shaking out, where you're trying to throw the football down the field. You're trying to force things in there. Pick 6, I don't know if it was miscommunication on the route, expecting him to come back in. Regardless, it's just you can't throw the ball soft to the sideline and expect good things to happen, right? Those balls have to be firm, and that's kind of been a trend, at least from what I've seen with Kirk, is not enough pace on the ball to the sideline. But really the toughest interception of the day, and really, in my opinion, what cost them the game, was the turnover on the goal line, right? They're down, whatever it is, inside the 5-yard line, and he's scrambling around and throws it into 3 guys. When you clearly need to throw the football away, right? Or dump it down. I think Bijan Robinson was right in front of him. Dump it down, throw the football away. Either way, we're leaving there with 3 points, and that changes everything at the end of that ball game, right? You're in a completely different situation. You're driving down there. I know Younghoe Koo missed a kick, but you're driving down there with faith that you're going to win that game with the field goal. So, it was tough. I don't think they should make a move this week, though. I really don't. I know everybody's talking about that. I think you're going against the Minnesota defense and everything that Brian Flores does. I think that's a tough place to put a rookie quarterback in there that has not played much ball this year. So I think they stick with Kirk Cousins. I think Raheem Morris has already said that, and I think that's probably the right decision.
I can't help but think when I watch Kirk Cousins that the field has shrunk for him, unfortunately, because the arm isn't there. It's the Achilles, the ability to push off that back leg. You've seen it, and he never had a big arm to begin with, but I think you've seen a notable decrease in, if you're just comparing him to the rest of quarterbacks in the NFL, he probably has the weakest arm of any starter, and you just see his inability to attack certain areas of the football field, and defenses know that now. I think defenses are really tuned into the fact that, hey, if we really want to force him to go outside the numbers or deep down the football field more, he's just going to be shaky in those regards, or he's going to put a lot more air on it and give us time to get there, that we can really make things tighter and more difficult for him over the middle of the football field. And I think you've seen that of late, and it's just going to be difficult for the Falcons. And so when you compare him and Michael Penix to what he has, just the juice alone in that arm that Penix has, I mean, he can really put it out there. That's why he obviously got drafted in the top 10. So I agree. I'm not ready to make the move just yet. But one more week like this, and it's like, we tried. You had the 2 great games against the Bucs, but outside those 2 great games against the Bucs, he just has not been what was promised at the quarterback position in Atlanta. Let's go to another NFC South quarterback in Bryce Young. I think a couple weeks ago we said, hey, nice start back from the benching, but we're not ready to do anything or make any proclamations just yet. The past 2 weeks since then, back-to-back touchdown drives in the final 2 minutes of the game. Heartbreaking losses in both of them, but if you're just watching as an objective outside observer, you're saying this guy looks like and is playing like a franchise quarterback. What have you seen from him, Matt, over these past 2 games?
I agree with you. I think it's the best football he's played in this league. And it looks like the guy that we all saw at Alabama, right? The ability to move, layer the football down the field, throw with touch and anticipation, and be accurate. The touchdown at the end of Thielen was awesome, right? Like just a really, really good play. So I love his movement. I love his throwing on the move. But the game changer for me has been the ability to deliver the football from the pocket and him being confident, right? It looks like a completely different guy, and I'm happy for him, right? Maybe this is exactly what he needed, right? We talk all the time, was him going to the bench, was at the end of his career, was at the end of his time in Carolina. He gets another opportunity because of injury and comes back and is ready to go. So I give him a lot of credit for during that time on the bench, whatever it is, right? And I give Dave Canales credit too, of kind of working through some of these things. But he looks like a different player. And I think, number one, you can see his confidence is back, right? There's a belief in what he's doing out there with how decisive he is. And you see him enjoying himself, right? Like, I think that makes a big difference, right? You're out there, you've got a little bit of self-belief, you made a couple plays, you start to feel yourself a little bit, you start celebrating a little bit, and I think that's when he's at his best. So I think it's awesome for the Panthers. I know it's a tough loss. Really, the last couple of weeks have been tough losses for them to swallow against 2 good football teams. So I think it's a really, really good stretch here right now for Bryce Young.
Yeah, I don't think from the moment, after he walked across the stage, got drafted, holds the jersey, from then till like he got benched and then came back, obviously, I don't think I saw him crack a smile. His body language as a rookie was part of the reason why I was so discouraged by his rookie season. Like, he looked beaten down after things went bad. And then I watched this past weekend, and there was a play where it's an RPO. He pulls it. His wide receivers don't know it's an RPO. They didn't run any routes. He has to spike it. And he's smiling, pointing at his guy, being like, hey, so, like, we were on the same page. But it was just a vastly different reaction to a negative play than we saw from him early on in his career with the Carolina Panthers. And so it's really easy to buy into, hey, if we get him some real wide receivers, if we get him some guys that are some true number, ones and number twos in this league, that aren't like, the UDFAs, the journeymen that are now currently catching passes from, we might have something special here in Carolina with the way he's played. Last quarterback we want to hit before we get to the quarterback of the week, though, Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia Eagles. They keep winning. He keeps handing the ball off. 11 of 19 in this game in the win over the Ravens for only 118 yards with a passing touchdown. They have not called upon him. A big part of this winning streak has been they really have just stopped passing the football in a meaningful manner. They are a run-first team. They're using him and his legs, and that's cut down on his fumbles, cut down on his turnovers, and led to a more complimentary football team. But is that sustainable come playoff time? Is he going to have to drop back and throw, and do we trust him and this passing attack with Kellen Moore at the helm come playoff time, Matt?
I mean, TBD, right? To be determined if they're going to use it more or whatever. But let's go to yesterday's ball game. To jumpstart them to get back into that game in the second quarter, right? That first drive, Saquon, the first drive they scored on, Saquon converts on a 3rd and 4. Jalen Hurts has a big run after that, and then it's 2 RPOs later, and they're in the end zone, right? So it was the run game, then they got to the pass. They come out the very next drive, the big play action. That was the best pass of the night for him. He sells kind of wide zone left, finds A.J. Brown coming, crossing over the middle. That to me is where it's sustainable for them, right? You've got this run game rolling right now. If you can kind of increase some of that big play action, and he's comfortable throwing the football on those in cuts over the middle. You saw the void in the defense. They had this awesome, CBS had this awesome camera angle right behind kind of the high end zone vision right behind it. And you could see that hole open up in the middle of the defense. That's what a run game does for you. And so I think if he can grow in that play action part of kind of his growth and development as a young player, because he still is a young player, right? That growth and development in kind of turning your back to the defense, coming back, ripping some of those in cuts over the middle. I think that will be huge because his game really has been throwing on the outside, right? Throwing those go routes on the outside, throwing the unders on the outside, the stop routes on the outside. If they can develop into a team that can play action pass over the middle, I think that part of it is sustainable for them.
Yeah, it's almost malpractice that they haven't been. It's like you have such a dominant running attack that draws so many eyes to it that basically, and when you add Jalen Hurts, it's like they have to account for two guys in the backfield every single play. To not just be picking apart that middle of the football field behind the linebackers, in front of the safeties, that area is almost malpractice, like I mentioned. And I do think that come playoff time, one, I don't trust many teams to stop this rushing attack. We just saw the Baltimore Ravens, top run defense in the NFL, get shredded. And two, it's like you empty the tank come playoff time. You bring out all the best plays, and who has the best players still? It's like this Philadelphia Eagles team. You still got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on the outside. They're still going to make plays. So while I don't necessarily trust Jalen Hurts nearly as much as I trust probably the other quarterbacks in the NFC, I'm not sure it really matters. This team is a house. All right, let's get to the part that everyone's been waiting for, the coveted quarterback of the week. Matt, who you got for week 13?
Russ was cooking, man. I got to go with Russell Wilson. I mean, I know he's got the pick six in there in that game, but that wasn't on him, right? At least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it was Pickens got thrown down on the slant route, throws a pick six, takes it back. It was his best game as a Steeler by far, in my opinion. And they were aggressive in the passing game. Coming out early on, Arthur Smith, offensive coordinator, they came out throwing it. And, I respected that plan. You look at the numbers, 29 of 38, big afternoon for him, over 400 yards passing, 10.3, averaging 10.3 attempt, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, solid day from Russ. It's a good sign. Like that to me, I know it's the Bengals defense. Like I understand that. But it's a good sign if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to come out and get into a little bit of a rhythm as they start to get towards crunch time in the playoffs, knowing you can go do it.
And it was a vintage George Pickens performance. He got thrown down by his helmet on a slant, and then, for good measure, has 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on his next 2 receptions, the way only George Pickens does. But Russell Wilson, he really has transformed this passing attack in a way that I don't think a lot of people gave him credit for being able to, myself included. I thought that the talent simply wasn't there. You have George Pickens, number 1 type of wide receiver, good. But I thought their number 2 and number 3 weren't good enough, and that's why they went out and made the move for Mike Williams. But the emergence of Calvin Austin, who obviously gets hurt in this game, unfortunately, but he's a dynamic playmaker. And then just Russ being able to spread it around, playing better ball than we saw at any point in his Denver Broncos career. Yeah, I'd be scared to face the Steelers team come playoff time. I do think with this defense and their complementary style of football that they could hang or beat any team in the AFC right now. Are there any honorable mentions you want to give out for Week 13 at the quarterback position?
I mean, we got to toss Josh Allen a bone. If you throw it and you catch it on the same play and score a touchdown and you win in the snow like that, you're doing snow angels after. He gets honorable mention for me. We were talking about it. What is he, the fifth player ever to catch his own pass for a touchdown? Is he the only one that had it lateraled to him? I feel like every time it's like a tip pass that comes back to you and you catch it, you end up going.
I'm not sure. I didn't see the Roy Zimmerman tape or the Frank Ryan tape. But the Brad Johnson one I may remember. I'm trying to think about that. It was maybe with the Bucs back in the day. But the Marcus Mariota one obviously was tipped back to him. But yeah.
I feel like Ben Johnson was looking at that being like, dude, we need to put that in. With all the gadgets
Mahomes
that
tweeted
he
last night.
Jealous.
Yeah,
Mahomes
he's like,
that was lit.
Yeah.
I liked it.
No one would see it coming, man. It was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much to Matt Ryan for joining us, as he does every single Monday, to break down the quarterback performances of the weekend. We'll be coming back in a second here with Jonathan Jones as he joins us to break down the storylines, the news and notes coming out of Week 13, right after this. We have Jonathan Jones joining the program to break down some of the biggest news and notes from over the weekend. We'll start with this. What Matt Ryan just left off talking about Russell Wilson, quarterback of the week. I want to know what his market is going to be like, because obviously he took the 1-year prove-it deal in Pittsburgh to up his contract on the next one. What kind of contract do we expect, and who could some of the suitors be for his talents?
Yeah, Mike, great question. I have no idea what his contract's going to be because I polled about 10 executives around the league last week asking them what they thought his contract would be, and it ranged in terms of average annual value from $10 million, and I think we got up to $35 million. Like, it's a huge difference. That's a massive difference. And so, first of all, we don't know what the structure would be. We also don't know where he's going to be. But let's pretend that, he stays in Pittsburgh because he is going to be a free agent come March. The Pittsburgh Steelers do not negotiate in season. So nothing is going to happen until the conclusion of this season. But this is really a basic supply and demand. You have 6 to 8 teams who won't have the same week 1 starter next year. You have not that many quarterbacks out there. You're going to have Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, who, let's just play like they will be week 1 starters somewhere. We can argue on a different podcast whether they should or not, okay? And then we will have Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Jacoby Brissett, and Jameis Winston. That's your free agent quarterback crop. And so if Russell keeps putting up the numbers that he did on Sunday, and I don't think that that's really sustainable, but he did look like he's back, right? And so now what does Russ want? Does he want to stay in Pittsburgh? Does he want to maybe help them out in terms of money? I am all for. I think everyone here is all for players getting every bit of money that they can. I will just simply say that Russell Wilson twice was made the Seattle Seahawks highest paid player in franchise history. He was then made the highest paid player in Denver Broncos history. He has career earnings of about $250 million. Maybe he doesn't have to take every single dollar in this next contract at age 37. Just, if he saved enough, he may not have to take every dollar. And so what his contract could look like all depends on what he wants out of his next team. But obviously the Steelers, if things keep going the way they did on Sunday, they absolutely want to retain it.
Yeah, it would be very surprising to me if, one, he even wanted to go elsewhere. Like, the situation he's in obviously plays to his strengths far more than it ever did in Denver. And I think he's seen that, like, hey, if I go to the wrong spot with the wrong OC, this could go south. We obviously paired with Arthur Smith there. I fit his offense perfectly. And they have a roster that's going to be playoff adjacent for a long time. Obviously, when Mike Tomlin's your head coach, that's always going to be the case. So, yeah, I do think Russell stays there. What it's going to be, I agree. I don't think he's going to try to maximize every single dollar. He wants the stability for his end of his career. Do we think, though, some of those other guys could get starting looks elsewhere? Sam Darnold, obviously, no matter how good he plays, I think the Vikings are turning the keys over to J.J. McCarthy next year, so he'll probably be looking for a new home. And then Jameis Winston with the Cleveland Browns obviously has lit up that franchise the past 4 weeks, leading the NFL now in yards per game over that span. Do we think either of those two guys get starting looks elsewhere, and where that could be?
Yeah, I think they have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Just numbers game-wise, they have to.
I think that they absolutely have to, right? Like, there's not enough. It's like a game of musical chairs, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be, there's going to be the Raiders, and there's going to be the Giants. You're going to have the Browns. It appears that Bryce Young is establishing and solidifying himself as that 2025 Week 1 starter. There's still a month of the season left to play, but clearly the arrow is pointed up there. With the Rams, does Matthew Stafford retire? Because I think we're now entering every year, like, we're going to have to deal with that question, right? You can continue on around the league, but again, I said 6 to 8. You go ahead and you have 2 Week 1 rookie quarterbacks, so now we have 4 to 6. You're going to have Russell perhaps staying in Pittsburgh. Let's play that out. So, Daniel Jones is probably going to go somewhere similar to a Sam Darnold contract. Remember, he barely played last year for the Niners. He goes to Minnesota. They hadn't drafted J.J. McCarthy. We didn't know if they were going to draft J.J. McCarthy, but he went as a backup on a 1-year, $10 million deal. So can you guess that Daniel Jones might get something like that, right? With some incentives, with some upside, perhaps. And then Sam Darnold has played himself into an NFL middle-class salary, right? Somewhere in that $25 million that we saw with Geno Smith and the Seahawks, up to 33 with Baker. That might be a little high, but that's the new NFL quarterback middle class.
All right, let's move on to Kyle's Bears here.
Middle class. That's a nice middle class to be in there. That's a nice little white picket fence neighborhood to be in there, bud.
Let's move on to the Bears, who fired Matt Eberflus on Friday. Kyle,
Did they?
I want to start with your takes, Kyle, before we get to JJ here. Initial thoughts. Let's hear it.
My initial thoughts are this should have happened last year. I wonder what the record of the Chicago Bears team would have been had they done the no-brainer and hired Jim Harbaugh, former quarterback of the Chicago Bears, to be the culture changer, leader of men, rah-rah, riskumba guy. Like, they would win a lot of games. They lost a game because of ineptitude at the head coaching position, which led to a skid of 6 straight losses and an implosion at Hallis Hall. It is a shame what has transpired. The good news for the Bears, the great news is Caleb Williams is him. Caleb Williams is him. And I think whether it's a defensive guy or an offensive guy, here's my strongest take. You fire the head coach, you can't retain any staff members from the old regime. And stick with me here. I know there's a lot of people that say, but I love Thomas Brown too, dude. He's got juice. He's got aura. Caleb Williams has looked the part under his tutelage. But I think he benefits from having all these different offensive coordinators, not immediately, but his full understanding, his perspective, his different perspectives, taking a look at the football from different angles will benefit him in the long run. And I think people don't need to be so nearsighted and understand that over the course of the next 10 years, we could be looking at a Chicago Bears team that could win a Super Bowl because of this Caleb Williams guy. You need to get the head coach right. Obviously, there's a lot of candidates out there, and me and JJ have talked at length about this on Sundays for the last couple of years, honestly. But the reality is this. If you fire your head coach, you can't retain any staff members. I've been a part of this thing before, and there's a stench on the guys that are left over from the previous administration, regardless of how good they are.
So, JJ, who do you think, who are the top candidates right now for the Chicago Bears to replace that head coach opening?
Okay, so what I wrote for Sunday morning is not necessarily getting into the top candidates, because as of Sunday morning, I actually truly and really do believe that the Bears did not have a list of guys that they know they are going to put requests in to interview, right? That process, this is a very thorough process that they're going to undergo. It's thorough. I mean, if you don't believe me, take a look at how long it took them to fire Matt Eberflus and why they let him go do that press conference over Zoom, because they were in the process of something that, frankly, we all knew as soon as that ball hit the ground from Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze that they were going to fire Matt Eberflus, that he wasn't going to coach the San Francisco 49ers game, right? So they haven't gotten into that, okay? So, but I do know that they want a leader of men. And I know that some people, because I've seen this over the past 30 hours, ever since I reported that people were questioning what that means. I don't think any player questions what that means. I don't think anyone who is around ball should question what that means. If you are, you're being intentionally obtuse, right? Going back to Kyle's point, Jim Harbaugh, no question about it. Dan Campbell, no question about it. Mike Tomlin, right? The list continues. D'Amico Ryans. It doesn't matter what your background is, right? It matters about how you can lead these guys. And so a Mike Vrabel, a Brian Flores, an Aaron Glenn. I even reported Marcus Freeman with Notre Dame, who was drafted by the Bears. All of these guys could potentially fit the mold for Chicago.
No, JJ, one thing. Mike, one thing. Marcus Freeman, stay at Notre Dame. Stay at Notre Dame. I want an NFL guy. My only concern about the guy that everybody in Chicago wants, Ben Johnson, is that the real leader of men in that locker room is Dan Campbell. His plate is less full. Ben Johnson's plate is less full. He worries about offense. He gets to be a genius in that regard. You become a head coach, now there are multiple more chapters in your daily to-do list. So I have questions about that. Go get a leader of men, like JJ says. Mike Vrabel, I'll buy you a house in Lake Forest, dude. You just come on, let's go.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Thanks so much for Jonathan Jones joining the program. After this, we're going to get a little deeper into the Bears, give Kyle his red meat, and let him go off on the franchise that he was drafted by. After this. Since we haven't talked, Kyle, since Thanksgiving went down in that heartbreaking Bears loss to the Detroit Lions, we had to give it a little recap. Your initial thoughts watching whatever the heck that was at the end of the game.
First and foremost, I want to give a tremendous amount of credit to the Chicago Bears team for being in that football game and Caleb Williams being the best when his best is needed. We've seen it time and time again. But another thing we've seen time and time again is the coaching staff legitimately peeing down their leg on the sideline. We're looking at two-tone khakis over there on the sideline with Matt Eberflus. There's a reason he is out of the building. And this is not an attack on his character. It's just an indictment on the fact that I don't think he was prepared for this moment. And people want to point the finger at Caleb Williams. He should have called timeout. He should have called timeout. You know what? He probably should have. But he's a rookie quarterback that's worrying about beating the Detroit Lions in that very moment. The person who also has the green light is the guy on the sideline, Matt Eberflus. And we've seen it far too many times where it just seems like at the end of these games, there seems to be a mental fog. With Matt Eberflus. We need somebody who is so dialed in. And I think that's why when we talk about the coaching situation, the offensive guys that are on this list and the defensive guys on this list, they both have a lot of very positive things about them. But when you think about game management, when you think about clock management, situational football, what do you think, Mike? You think about offense, right? You think about offense. So are you going to have a guy that's going to be brilliant in situational football that will flip these losses to wins? Or are you going to have a culture guy that permeates the entire locker room, a Dan Campbell type? You know, we've talked about Mike Vrabel. But I just think about the decisions that they've made here. And Ryan Poles had the opportunity to get rid of Matt Eberflus last year. And we talk about it at length, and I just can't help. I try not to look in the rearview mirror because you'll run into something ahead of you. But when I look in the rearview mirror, I see a guy named Jim Harbaugh in that portal coming from college to the NFL, and we missed the boat on him. So let's get our tears out today and move forward because that's the guy right there, Ryan Poles. And I've spent some time with him before, and he's a really bright guy. His right-hand man is Ian Yates Cunningham, an O-lineman. That's two O-linemen at the top of the building there in Chicago. I think that, first and foremost, has to be their priority, is protecting Caleb Williams. 49-plus sacks. These are David Carr numbers, right? David Carr, 49 sacks. The reason we didn't watch him play for a very long time. Caleb is so good, he rises above this. I'm so excited for the Bears. It's all out ahead of them. And it all comes down to who they bring in as the head coach.
Yeah, I do think that end of the game situation, his decision not to call timeout Eberflus, not on him. Not say like not the worst call there in the world. You had 30 seconds left. You can run another play. You only
take
had the
a
one
negative
timeout.
play. You got to bang a timeout. If it's a 2-yard gain, you get stuffed to the line of scrimmage. You get back on the ball quick. But when you are rallying from in your own backfield, your quarterback's getting up off the turf. Both your tackles are running by. Bang a timeout immediately. Reset.
Yeah, I think the issue was, one, you had the play before, it was a call draw that no one was on the same page about it being a draw. You had discombobulation in that regard. And then you basically have to prepare your rookie quarterback for end-of-game situations saying, we don't audible with 30 seconds left. We call a play, that play gets to the line, and it gets snapped. You know, the ball comes out. We're not trying to confuse the defense. We're not trying to do anything other than get that play off and pick up just a few more yards to get us back into field goal range. So at the end of the day, that's a coaching preparation problem, even if it was in the moment on Caleb Williams to be doing that. He has to have that hammered home from him from the moment he got into the facility, that 2-minute, we run those plays as they're called. So, yeah, the state of the Bears at this moment in time, not good, but I think they have a unique opportunity where you have a number 1 overall pick, as talented as Caleb Williams, and a talent around him that is close. It is close enough. Now, it's a very difficult division, but it's close enough that you can attract a top head coaching talent if you were to. In your mind right now, who's your number 1? Who's your number 1 choice for the Chicago Bears if they get anyone at the head coaching position?
Who would make me feel a little bit nicey right now? It would be Mike Vrabel. I just feel like when I watch those Tennessee Titans teams, even when they were outmatched in terms of roster, they just showed up and they got after it. They were a blue-collar, bar fight style team. And, man, Mike Vrabel would be so perfect for the city of Chicago, who's a blue-collar town. And I think they'd appreciate a guy like that. Another dude, Aaron Glenn in Detroit. Obviously, he has done more with less in Detroit this year. It's been fantastic to watch with all their injuries on defense. They still find a way to go out there and compete. One guy I wish we could pluck from the college ranks, Dan Lanning. You talk about leaders of men and situationally aware coaches. I don't know if there's anybody better than the guy at my alma mater, Oregon.
He's been awesome. It truly has. And the one that I, as a Packers fan, would not want to see, I don't want Mike Vrabel in the division. Put him anywhere else. I don't want to see Mike Vrabel on the opposing sideline. It's just...
He's just going to give LaFleur wedgies. He's going to give LaFleur wedgies. He's going to give Campbell noogies. He's going to give O'Connell, what's that on your chest? Boop, got your nose. I mean, it's just going to be bully ball in the NFC North. And that's what we need. We need a bully.
We shall see who they go with. A lot of time, obviously, to prepare at this point. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After this, going to wrap the show with a little overreaction versus reality coming up next. It's our favorite game to play every single week of the regular season. Overreaction versus reality. Week 13, Azeez Al-Shaair. Brutal hit on Trevor Lawrence. Overreaction versus reality. He will not play another down this season. What say you, Kyle?
I could totally see that being the case for the regular season, but they're going to win their division. So we're looking at a team that's going to be playing in the playoffs. I think that the NFL would not force this guy to sit out in the playoffs. Although what we saw was clearly late. It was, in my opinion, dirty. It was, in my opinion, something that had malicious intent behind it. And we're trying to steer our league away from seeing guys in a fencing posture scenario. And for a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, or any quarterback, any player for that matter, to be laying on the ground in that posture while there's a brawl going on, it was a dark moment for the NFL, in my opinion. The only thing that, my overreaction would be not getting off of the guy as an offensive lineman. That would be my overreaction. Like, you're not leaving the building, you're not leaving the field, and if you do, we're going to find you. At the end of the day, that's part of football, and I hope that moving forward he can clean that up, because this isn't the first time we've seen him do something that is borderline dirty. I remember against the Bears, he punched Roschon Johnson on the sideline. No fine for that. But it seems to have caught up with him in Houston.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's another game, but I do think you're getting at least 4 games out of this.
Yes, they're not going to make him miss playoffs.
But they're not going to make him miss playoffs. So
no,
I think it's a little bit of an overreaction to say he's going to be out the rest of the year. All right, next one. Kirk Cousins will finish the Falcons season on the bench. Overreaction or reality?
I think it's an overreaction, particularly because of what Matt Ryan was talking about earlier on this show. You're playing a Brian Flores defense. You're going to need to have that mental acuity. And I'm not saying Michael Penix does not have the mental acuity. I'm just saying Kirk Cousins is 40. He's seen everything, and Brian Flores isn't going to catch him off guard. Mind you, the arm strength isn't the same, but a lot of these replacement blitzes, you're throwing them where they're coming from. You don't need a ton of arm talent for that. I see Kirk Cousins at the very least playing this next week.
I see him playing this next week, but I think it's reality. I think he finishes this season on the bench for the Atlanta Falcons because he hasn't been good.
You're saying finish the season. Okay, so I'm in agreement with Matt Ryan, but after the Vikings game, to your point, we could very well see Michael Penix.
I think we see a change. One, because I think they're going to be out of it by that point. The way their schedule is, how poorly they've been playing, I think the Bucs clinch it by week 18. And then 2, I just think if you just take away the 2 Bucs games, he has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL this season. And obviously the Bucs defensive game plans, I've lamented them on the pods after both times. They didn't adjust whatsoever. But if you can't carve up with the talent he has at the receiver position, most defenses around the NFL, yeah, I think it's time for them to make a change, and I think they will. So there you have it.
Hey, Mike, I get to see you tomorrow, which is nice.
We'll be back tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. Until then, keep pushing.